Hey, what's going on, guys? At UFC 295, Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereirea. We saw some horrible performances, and I'm going to give my opinion on who deserves to be cut from the UFC after their performance at UFC 295. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, then I'm going to get into my actual list, saving last on the list for who I believe most deserves to be fired after their performance at UFC 295. And I know what some of you are thinking. Joey, how could you cut anyone from UFC 295? There wasn't that many bad performances. I have 7 on this list, including honorable mentions. I have 7. And I'm telling you right now, there's a couple shocking cuts. You're probably never going to guess 1 or 2. Some of you may be able to guess them, but 1 or 2 is going to be pretty shocking. And a couple of the honorable mentions I have, you are not going to expect. But let's start right away with the first honorable mention, and that is Roosevelt Roberts. He lost to Mateusz Rebecki, got armbarred in the first round. You know, he stepped in on short notice. He missed weight. He had a prior UFC stint where he traded wins and losses. He's just not UFC caliber. He's not UFC caliber. He would have been on the list, but I feel bad for him. He took the fight on short notice, but he's probably going to get cut, honestly, missing weight. He's probably going to get cut, but he just didn't even make it competitive. We've already seen him. We've seen him lose to Vince Pichel. We've seen him get, KO'd by Inacio Bahamondes with that spinning back kick. I just don't think Roosevelt Roberts currently belongs in the UFC. He had an opportunity on The Ultimate Fighter. So he was originally in the UFC. He traded wins and losses, got cut, got a second opportunity on The Ultimate Fighter, lost on The Ultimate Fighter. Now he steps in on short notice against Mateusz Rebecki, loses in the first round. Who's he going to fight next? I don't know who's he going to fight next, but we'll give him one more opportunity just because he took it on short notice. And honestly, cut Rebecki's hairline too. Literally cut it, shave it. Rebecki, somebody needs to tell Rebecki to go bald. That top-down angle, whoever got that top-down angle of Rebecki grappling, I mean, that hairline was horrific. So please cut that as well. But Roosevelt Roberts clearly doesn't have the skills to be in the UFC. He's only 29 years old. So he can, grow outside the UFC and maybe come back. He can get on a winning streak and maybe come back. But right now, he does not belong. But because he took it on short notice, we'll give him one more chance. Moving on to my next honorable mention, and that is Tabitha Richie. She fought Lupita Godinez. It was a split decision, even though the fight wasn't all that competitive. I'm tired of watching some of these low-level fighters just punch air for an entire fight. I'm really tired of it. And she's an honorable mention because it's only one fight losing skid. She won her last fight against Jillian Robertson, won her fight before that against Jessica Penne. But look at the low-level competition. People act like Tabitha Richie is good. She is not good. And I'm so tired of the UFC incel simp fan base basically self-promoting fighters because they like staring at their asses, okay? Look at this striking that Tabitha Richie had. It was horrific. She was punching air the entire fight. And I understand, okay, Tabitha Richie isn't super low level, at least for that division, which honestly, it really is super low level for that division. I'm kind of talking myself out of it. I mean, she's not the worst fighter ever. She's not a Juliana Miller, who I don't even remember which division she's in. Is she in flyweight maybe? So she's not that, but It's just a sad state of women's MMA. The UFC's not evolving and growing and signing more talent. It's just not out there, I guess. I don't know. But Tabitha Richie, people only want to keep her around because they want to stare at her ass. That's it. They just want to stare at her ass. Okay, congrats. But she just punches air the entire fight. It was horrible against Godinez, and one judge even scored it for Tabitha Richie, which is an absolute embarrassment. But yeah, Tabitha Richie, honorable mention. She loses one more fight, cut her. She has no good wins. I mean, I guess she has the win over Polyana Viana, which is okay. But outside of that, I mean, the wins have been Maria Oliveira, okay, and not very good. It's just bottom of the barrel women's MMA. And in my opinion, just get rid of it. Moving on to my next honorable mention, and this is very similar to the last honorable mention, and that is Mackenzie Dern. Her striking is horrific. It's always been horrific. And people, honestly, and myself included, kind of bought into the hype. Her grappling isn't that good. Her jiu-jitsu isn't that good. Her entries are horrific. Her wrestling is terrible. And she just moves into range like this, like she's staring up at a solar eclipse. That's literally how Mackenzie Dern strikes. And Joe Rogan in the commentary is acting like, oh, it's regressed. No, it's always been that bad. It's looked bad in every single fight she's ever had. And the fact that you look at her resume, the only people that she's submitting is super low-level fighters. Hannah Cyphers, you look back, Amanda Cooper, she gets a split decision win over Ashley Yoder, didn't even finish her. Ronda Marcos gets a finish there. But outside of that, Nina Nunes, okay, you get Verna Janaroba decision. Tisha Torres split decision. Angela Hill gets a win there, doesn't submit her. It's not like she's submitting these higher level female fighters. She hasn't even fought the elite of the elite, to be honest. Jessica Andrade is the first decent fighter that she fought. And Jessica Andrade has been mailing it in. Jessica Andrade has been showing up for paychecks. Jessica Andrade has been finishing her last 3 fights. But Mackenzie Dern, instead of having any type of game plan, she just says, let me march in with my chin up in the sky. That's her game plan. That does not belong in the UFC. And again, it's the UFC simps. It's these guys who just simp over women's MMA. And they're like, oh, I really like staring at Mackenzie Dern's ass while she fights. Let me take a look at her brown eye. That's essentially what's going on here. She doesn't have good striking. Her jiu-jitsu is overrated. Her wrestling is non-existent. Her defensive ability is just horrific. Cut her from the organization. She is an honorable mention. She's been trading wins and losses. She's only in a 1-fight losing skid, so we have to keep her around. I mean, she's fun to watch at least. She is an exciting fighter, but still, I mean, she's bottom of the barrel women's MMA. Moving on to my last honorable mention, and this is one of my shocking cuts on the list, and that is Ciryl Gane. Well, wait a second, Joey. How is Ciryl Gane on the list? He wasn't even fighting at UFC 295. Ciryl Gane straight up ducked Tom Aspinall. Said, I only want to fight for a title. I'm not fighting Tom Aspinall. I'm not fighting Sergei Pavlovich. And Ciryl Gane had the audacity to tweet out, calling out Tom Aspinall after he wins an interim title. What an embarrassment you are, Ciryl Gane. Go fight Jailton Almeida. I think that's what Tom Aspinall said as well. I seen that like a headline somewhere. Go fight Jailton Almeida. You didn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. You were ducking him. You didn't want to fight him or Pavlovich. You said, I only want to fight for a title. Meanwhile, you got dispatched by John Jones. You beat Sergei Spivak. I almost said Pavlovich. You beat Sergei Spivak, and now you think you deserve a title shot? You're 2-2 in your last 4. You ducked Tom Aspinall. You hid in witness protection. You said you didn't want to fight. You said Tom Aspinall didn't deserve the fight. And now all of a sudden you want to tweet out calling him out because he won the interim belt. Shame on you, Ciryl Gane. Cut Ciryl Gane. He almost made the actual list. But because the heavyweight division, it lacks depth, we're going to keep Ciryl Gane around. That's why he's an honorable mention, but I need to go off on Ciryl Gane. That tweet really kind of infuriated. I was clenching my fist. When I seen that tweet, I said, you know what? Ciryl Gane's really embarrassing himself. I mean, could he have ducked Tom Aspinall any harder? Tom Aspinall was calling out Gane, and Gane's like, no. No, I'm not fighting Tom Aspinall. I'm only fighting for a title. Well, guess what? Ciryl Gane, you ain't fighting for a belt for at least max, a year, maybe the end of 2024. You could get a title shot. If John Jones and Stipe fight in the summer and then retire immediately, maybe they give Ciryl Gane a title shot. Maybe he wins the fight in the meantime. He's on a 2-fight streak. But you may not get a fight until 2025. If you keep winning and get another fight or two, you may not get a title fight till 2025, Ciryl Gane. So keep waiting. You had your chance. You ducked Tom Aspinall. You could have probably been booked on UFC 295. That could have been a possibility. But instead, you're just tweeting from the sidelines. Moving on to my actual list, starting off with Denis Buzukja. I don't feel good about this, but he doesn't belong in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Gets starched out by Jamal Emmers in the first round. Nasty right hand just drops him and finishes him off. He took his first fight on short notice against Sean Woodson. He looked okay. He had a decent performance in that fight. But you're getting starched out by Jamal Emmers. Jamal Emmers is better than people give him credit for. But now you're on a 2-fight losing streak. You really don't belong in the UFC. I just don't think he has the skill set. Maybe give him one more opportunity. He is 26 years old, so he's young. I still think he can improve. But to not even make it competitive in your second UFC fight against basically the lowest level of competition that you're going to get. And Jamal Emmers, I get it. He's not bad. He's not a bad fighter. I'm not trying to insult Jamal Emmers. But it only goes up from here. And you're getting first round finish. I mean, how long did that? It was under a minute. He got finished. So I just don't think Denis Buzukja belongs in the UFC. So I think Denis Buzukja should be cut from the UFC. And unfortunately, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. The competition he beat outside the UFC, 6-4, 7-7, 9-5. Not the greatest level of competition. And who's he going to fight from here? I don't know who they would book him against, but I wouldn't favor him basically in any matchup. Moving on to my second to last cut. And I'm wondering if some people could have guessed this one was going to be on this list. And that is Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic, Grandpa Stipe, showed up to UFC 295. And I think this is a bit exaggeratory, but he could barely walk. I know I feel like it's a bit of an exaggeration. He always kind of been a little bit bow-legged, but he looked old. And he's holding up the heavyweight division. He's been out for damn near 3 years. By the time he fights John Jones, it's going to be almost 4 years. I know I've been talking about it ad nauseum. People are probably tired of hearing about it, but he's going to hold up the heavyweight division. We're going to watch Stipe, who's been answering phones at the fire department for the last 3 years. He got folded like a lawn chair in his last time out. And think about this. Think about this. The last time Stipe Miocic won a fight was all the way back in August of 2020. They were doing pay-per-views in the Apex with no crowds. Think about how long ago that was. I mean, that's the last time he got a win. It was against DC, Daniel Cormier, who's literally been retired for years. Since that fight, I believe. That was his last fight, UFC 252. That is the same card that Sean O'Malley got his legs brutally chopped by Marlon Vera, then brutally flash KO'd with brutal ground and pound elbows, and then O'Malley was stretchered out of the cage with no serious injuries. That's how long ago that was. That was the same card. And we're giving him a title shot in 2024? I forgot the year. See, I was like, oh, he's getting a title shot 2023. I can't believe that. You literally have to go into a time machine to justify Stipe Miocic's title shot. He doesn't belong. He's holding up the division. We should be getting John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. That is the fight the real fans want. But instead, we got to watch Stipe Miocic look very, very old. Anybody who saw him, I mean, is that the fight you want to see? He looks like he should be going right into a senior citizen home. And again, this is a bit hyperbolic, but you get my point. For me, there's no hype behind a John Jones-Stipe Miocic fight. Maybe Stipe of 3-4 years ago, yeah, that would have been awesome. Sweet. Book John Jones-Stipe. That would have been crazy. But we're going to see him sit out for, if he fights in the summer, it'll be 3 years and a couple months. Because his last fight was in March of 2021. So let's say he fights in July. It'll be 3.5 years almost. Just under 3.5 years. And we're going to watch him fight John Jones, and we're supposed to get excited about that. He's literally gray in the face. I don't want to see that. So cut Stipe Miocic. I've been a strong advocate of cutting Stipe Miocic. All he's doing is holding up the division. Let him stay a firefighter. Let him fight fires. Let him save cats out of trees. Let him answer phones at the fire department. You know, if I call 911 for a fire, I just want to hear Stipe answer the phone. Can I help you? That's what I want to hear. I don't want to see him fighting John Jones. I don't want to be buying a pay-per-view with him fighting John Jones. He shouldn't be fighting for the heavyweight title. It should not happen. So cut Stipe Miocic. Moving on to my number one cut. And I'm wondering if half of you guys aren't even going to know who this is. But my number one cut from UFC 295 is Brian Miner. Now, this might be pronounced Minner, but I'm going to call him Brian Miner. This was a judge at UFC 295. This guy's an outright idiot. Thank God there was a finish in every main card fight. We took this guy out of the equation. Just to give some examples. Nazim Sadikov versus Vyacheslav Borshev. No 10-8 in the second round. That is a clear-cut 10-8 for Sadikov. He dominated him, almost finished him, destroyed him, literally beat him to death in the second round. Oh, nope. Brian Miner, no 10-8 for Nazim Sadikov. Almost gave away the fight to Borshev, which would have been absolutely crazy. It should have been a draw. It deserved to be a draw. And you have idiots like this guy. And what really pisses me off about this is because these decisions didn't necessarily affect the outcomes because he was in the minority, people don't get outraged about it. I'm still just as outraged about it. I don't care that he didn't end up ruining it because the other two judges got it right. These people need to be eradicated, okay? They need to be fired from their jobs. Bare minimum, they need some training. They need some coaching. Horrible, horrible scorecard in the Sadikov fight. Then you have Tabitha Richie versus Lupe Godinez. Lupe Godinez won every single round. He literally gave it to Tabitha Richie 30-27. 30-27. So in case you don't know, that's every single round for Tabitha Richie. Keep in mind, Tabitha Richie lost every single round. Brian Miner is an embarrassment. What is he trying to one-up Mike Bell? Absolute embarrassment. Then, if that's not enough, he gave Mackenzie Dern round 1. It was a close round, but then at the end, Jessica Andrade hurt her badly. So Jessica Andrade takes that round. It's pretty clear, you know. That one's probably the most forgivable out of the three, but there's no way you should be giving Mackenzie Dern that round. What an embarrassment. And imagine if we would have had some close title fights. Oh my God. Imagine Sergei Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall go to war for 5 rounds, but there's a clear winner, 3-2. And we got to rely on Brian Miner. Imagine if Jiri Prochazka, Alex Pereirea go to war for 5 rounds. We got to rely on Brian Miner. Just because it didn't happen doesn't mean we shouldn't take precautions. Get rid of this guy. Train him. He can use the horn. He can use the clapper at the 10 seconds. I don't want him offering up any more scorecards. This guy does not know how to score a fight. I don't know why he wasn't removed. The Athletic Commission who was overseeing UFC 295, the New York State Athletic Commission, I know they're kind of one of the younger commissions, but How can they see this and not be like, okay, we got to correct it? One bad judge's scorecard, they could be like, okay, this is so egregious, let's take him off scorecards. I mean, seriously. A 10-8 not given to Sadikov? And then the 30-27 Tabitha Richie. I swear he was staring at her ass the whole time. That's all Brian Miner was staring at. This guy's an embarrassment. This guy doesn't know what he's watching. This guy doesn't know the rules. This guy doesn't know the scoring criteria. And just because he didn't fuck something up doesn't mean he shouldn't be forgiven. Doesn't mean he should be forgiven. I misspoke there. He should still be held to the standard. There still should be outrage. But instead, we're like, oh, well, the right winner got their hand raised. I hate that. I hate that. He should be held accountable. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. And thank God every fight on the main card didn't go to a finish or didn't go to a decision and end it in a finish, because Brian Miner, he would have found a way to screw it up. He had no idea what he was watching. He had no idea how to score the fight. So Brian Miner's my number one cut. Stupid question of award of the night goes to Brian Miner for asking whether or not round 2 was a 10-8, to quote Dana White. What an embarrassment. Cut Dana White too for the way he acted at the post-fight presser. I did an entire video on it. I'll link it down in the description. But this dude's an embarrassment. He clowned a guy for asking, is there any possibility that you would co-promote with PFL to do a John Jones versus Francis Ngannou fight? And Dana White sat there and clowned him and then said it's the stupidest question, and then went on to answer a question about, oh, what was the vibe like with Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump? What was the vibe like? And then went on to answer a question of, oh, how do you feel about Mark Zuckerberg, liking the UFC and tearing his ACL? But that guy had the dumb question, asking the question that the fans wanted to hear about. John Jones, Francis Ngannou. So cut Dana White. Throw him as a cherry on the top. He's a bonus pick at the end here. I didn't even plan to throw him in here. But if you want to check out that full video, I'll link it down in the description, as well as the end cards. Thank you guys so much for watching. Is there anybody I missed? Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.